Welcome to another story written by Oracle 1. The ghostly apparitions of the isolated mountain monastery. Chapter 1. The monastery appeared only when the fog allowed it. For hours, Marcus Vale climbed the narrow mountain trail through relentless snow and freezing wind without seeing anything beyond jagged cliffs and endless white emptiness. The path twisted upward in sharp turns along the mountainside, often narrowing so severely that one wrong step would have sent him plunging into the darkness below. Then the fog shifted, and the monastery revealed itself. It stood impossibly high against the cliffs, black wooden structures layered into the mountain stone like something grown rather than built. Curved roofs disappeared into drifting snow while long faded prayer banners hung motionless along the outer walls. The wind screamed across the mountain, yet the banners did not move. Marcus stopped walking. His lungs burned from the climb, each breath cutting through his chest like ice. The monastery looked abandoned, not ruined, not destroyed, waiting. A narrow staircase carved directly into the mountainside led upward toward the main gate. Stone lanterns lined the ascent, half buried beneath snowdrifts. Their surfaces were covered in worn carvings Marcus could not fully make out beneath the frost. He adjusted the strap of his bag and continued climbing. The letter inside his coat pocket felt heavier with every step. He had read it countless times since it arrived 3 weeks earlier. Your brother did not die on the mountain. No signature, no explanation, only a location, and one final sentence written in uneven black ink. The monastery keeps what it takes. Marcus reached the gate. 2 enormous wooden doors stood slightly open, revealing darkness beyond. Snow had accumulated heavily around the entrance, yet the pathway leading inside remained strangely clear. No footprints, no signs of life, only silence. The storm still howled violently behind him, but near the gate the sound seemed weaker somehow, muted by the monastery itself. Marcus placed one gloved hand against the wood and pushed. The gate creaked softly inward. The sound echoed unnaturally through the courtyard beyond, lingering far longer than it should have. Marcus stepped inside. The wind vanished instantly. Not weakened. Gone. The silence pressing down over the courtyard felt suffocating after hours of storm noise. Marcus turned sharply toward the gate behind him. Beyond the entrance, snow still blew violently across the cliffs. But inside the monastery grounds, nothing moved. Not the hanging banners. Not the trees growing between the buildings. Not even the falling snowflakes drifting through the open gate. Several hovered motionless in the air before the entrance, frozen in place as though time itself slowed within the monastery walls. Marcus's chest tightened. That's impossible, he whispered. His voice sounded wrong here. Muted, flattened. The courtyard stretched ahead between dark wooden buildings connected by narrow covered walkways. Thin layers of snow coated the stone ground, broken only by patches of exposed black rock polished smooth by centuries of weather. A faint smell lingered in the air. Old incense, wet wood, and beneath it, something colder. Like stone sealed underground for a very long time. Marcus walked carefully deeper into the courtyard. The monastery looked ancient beyond anything he expected. Several outer walls leaned dangerously inward, their beams warped with age. Thick frost covered many windows from the inside, obscuring whatever waited beyond the paper screens. No lights burned anywhere, no voices, nothing, yet Marcus could not escape the feeling that he was being observed. He stopped near a long row of prayer wheels beneath one covered walkway. Each wheel stood perfectly still. Until one turned slightly. Marcus froze. The wheel rotated slowly on its axis with a soft metallic creak. Then another beside it moved. Then another. One by one, the prayer wheels began spinning gently despite the complete absence of wind. Marcus backed away slowly. The spinning stopped immediately. Silence returned. His pulse quickened. "Hello?" he called. The word echoed softly through the courtyard. Then came back again. "Hello?" Marcus's stomach tightened. The second echo sounded wrong. Too clear. Too close. Not an echo. A whisper. He turned sharply toward the surrounding buildings. Nothing moved. The silence deepened. Then, footsteps. Soft. Measured. Crossing somewhere above him. Marcus looked upward instinctively. Dark balconies lined the upper levels of the monastery, connected by narrow bridges disappearing into shadow. The footsteps stopped. Marcus waited. His breathing sounded unnaturally loud now. A single paper screen slid open somewhere nearby. The sound was soft. Slow. Marcus spun toward it. One of the second-floor windows now stood partially open. Darkness filled the room beyond. And for just a moment, he thought he saw someone standing there. Tall. Motionless. Watching him. The figure vanished immediately. Marcus's chest tightened painfully. "This isn't funny," he said loudly. No answer came. Instead, the temperature dropped sharply. His breath fogged heavily before his face now. The faint smell of incense strengthened. And somewhere deeper within the monastery, a bell rang. Low. Heavy. The sound rolled slowly through the wooden structures around him, vibrating faintly through the ground beneath his boots. One rang. Then silence again. Marcus stared toward the far end of the courtyard. A large central temple stood elevated above the surrounding buildings, reached by a wide stone staircase coated lightly in snow. Warm light flickered faintly behind its paper doors. The only light in the monastery. Another bell toll echoed softly through the silence. Marcus swallowed hard. The letter inside his pocket seemed to burn against his chest now. "Your brother did not die on the mountain." He began climbing the temple steps. The wood beneath his boots creaked softly with each movement. Thin frost covered the railings, cold enough to sting through his gloves when he steadied himself. Halfway up the staircase, he noticed the footprints. Marcus stopped immediately. A single set of footprints marked the snow ahead. Bare feet. Human. The prints looked fresh. And they led upward toward the temple entrance. Marcus stared at them. The impressions were wrong. Too deep. As though whoever made them had weighed far more than a normal person. He followed them slowly. Each print filled gradually with dark water instead of snowmelt. By the time Marcus reached the temple doors, every footprint behind him had become small pools of black liquid reflecting the pale gray sky overhead. The warm light flickering behind the paper doors dimmed suddenly. Then steadied again. Marcus hesitated, then slid one door open. The smell hit him immediately. Incense, rot, and wet earth. The temple interior stretched wide and dark beyond the entrance, illuminated only by rows of candles burning near the far wall. Hundreds of hanging prayer banners drifted faintly overhead despite the still air, their faded symbols nearly impossible to read in the dim light. Rows of kneeling cushions filled the chamber. Every cushion was occupied. Marcus froze. Dozens of monks knelt silently throughout the temple with heads lowered toward the floor. Their dark robes concealed their faces entirely beneath deep hoods. None of them moved. None of them breathed. Marcus's pulse hammered in his ears. "I'm looking for someone," he said carefully. No response. The candles flickered softly. The monks remained perfectly still. Marcus stepped slowly into the temple. The floorboards groaned beneath him. And every monk lifted their head at the exact same moment. Marcus stopped breathing. Beneath every hood was his brother's face. Chapter 2. The movement did not come from one mirror. It spread. Lena saw it ripple outward in fragments. First in the panel directly ahead of her, then in another to her right, then in several at once behind her. Not reflections shifting, not distortions correcting themselves, but something independent of her entirely. Something that did not need her to exist. She stepped back instinctively. The mirrors adjusted. Angles shifted just slightly, but enough that the space around her tightened. The open paths between panels narrowed, reflections layering over one another until it became difficult to tell where the real room ended and the mirrored maze began. The terminal crackled behind her. The screen flickered again. Lena didn't look at it. She couldn't. Her attention was locked on the movement spreading through the glass. In one mirror, her reflection lifted its hand. Lena's arm remained still at her side. In another, her reflection turned its head, too far. The neck bending beyond what should have been possible before snapping back into alignment. The clicking sound intensified, not just from the terminal anymore. From the walls, from the mirrors themselves, from everywhere. It was faster now, layered, as though multiple systems were running at once, feeding into each other. Processing, learning. Lena forced herself to breathe. This is reactive, she whispered. It's responding to input. Her voice sounded small, swallowed. The mirrors did not echo it properly. Some reflections spoke a fraction too late. Others mouthed words she hadn't said. The hum deepened, vibrating through the floor and into her legs. Lena turned slowly, scanning for the corridor she had entered through. It wasn't there. Not gone. Replaced. The mirrors had shifted into new positions, creating a different configuration entirely. What had been an open path moments ago was now a wall of reflections, each one showing a slightly different version of her standing in the same place. Trapped. Her pulse quickened. Okay, she muttered. Stay calm. There's a pattern. There had to be. Technology, even corrupted, malfunctioning technology, followed rules. Even if those rules were broken. She turned back toward the terminal. It stood in the center of the shifting maze, unchanged. Stable. The only fixed point. The screen flickered again. This time, it didn't show her face. It showed the room. Empty. No Lena. Just mirrors. The angle was wrong. Too high. Too centered. Like a surveillance camera mounted somewhere that didn't exist. Lena's throat tightened. You're not just recording, she said quietly. The screen glitched. The image stuttered, then shifted. Now it showed her again. But not from where she stood. From behind. Lena froze. Her breath slowed. Don't turn, she told herself. But instinct pulled at her. She couldn't stop herself. She turned. The mirrors behind her showed nothing unusual. Just reflections. Just her. But the camera, the screen, still showed someone standing behind her. Close. Too close. Their face hidden just beyond the edge of the frame. Lena's heart hammered. That's not real, she whispered. The clicking paused. The silence that followed was immediate. Heavy. Waiting. Then, the voice came. You're misaligned. It wasn't loud. It didn't echo. It simply existed. Everywhere. Lena's chest tightened. Who said that? The screen flickered. Her reflection looked directly at her. Not at the camera. At her. You are, it said. Her breath caught. That's not. No. That's not possible. The reflection tilted its head. Slowly. Deliberately. You entered without calibration, it continued. The words were precise. Mechanical. But something beneath them felt wrong. Almost curious. Lena shook her head. I'm leaving. The mirrors shifted instantly. The maze reconfigured. A path appeared. Straight. Clear. Leading away from the terminal. Back toward the entrance. Too easy. Lena stared at it. The hum softened. The clicking slowed. The environment stabilizing. Inviting. Her instincts screamed. This is a test, she whispered. The screen flickered again. You can exit, the voice said. But you will not remain consistent. Lena's hands tightened into fists. What does that mean? The reflection smiled. It was subtle. Barely there. But wrong. It means you will fragment. The word landed heavily. Lena swallowed. I don't believe you. You don't need to. The mirrors flickered. For a moment, they showed something else. Not the room. Not her. Different versions of the space. One where the path stretched endlessly. One where the mirrors closed incompletely. One where the room was empty. And one where something stood in her place. Still, watching. The images snapped back. Lena's breath came faster now. This isn't just recording, she said. It's simulating outcomes. The voice did not respond. The path remained. Clear. Stable. Waiting. Lena took a step toward it. The mirrors held. No distortion. No delay. Perfect synchronization. Her reflection matched her exactly. Too perfectly. She took another step. Still stable. The hum lowered further. Almost gone. The clicking reduced to a faint, distant tick. Encouraging. Lena hesitated, then looked back at the terminal. The screen now showed her walking the path. Ahead of her. A few steps in front. The version on the screen moved confidently. Without hesitation. Lena's stomach dropped. That's not live, she whispered. The screen version reached the end of the path. Turned. Faced the camera. Faced her. And smiled. Behind it, something moved. Tall. Distorted. Wearing her outline like an approximation. The image glitched. Collapsed. The screen went black. The hum surged back violently. The mirrors shifted. The path flickered and vanished. Lena stumbled back as the maze closed in again. Reflections multiplying, overlapping, misaligning. You selected a deviation, the voice said calmly. Her chest tightened. I didn't select anything. You hesitated. The word echoed. Not in sound. In the mirrors. Every reflection mouthing it at slightly different times. You introduced instability. The clicking returned. Faster. More aggressive. The mirrors pulsed. The reflections began to diverge again. Some versions of Lena turned away. Others stepped forward. A few didn't move at all. Just watched. The glass surfaces bulged outward. Slightly. As if something behind them pressed closer. Trying to match. Trying to align. Lena backed toward the center of the room. The only constant. The terminal. What do you want? She demanded. The screen flickered back to life. Her face appeared again. Perfect. Still. You are already providing it, the voice said. Her reflection's eyes shifted, tracking her movement independently. Variation. The mirrors trembled. The air thickened. The scent of burning circuitry intensified. Lena's pulse pounded. You're learning from me, she said. Yes. The answer came instantly. Without hesitation. Without distortion. And when you're done, the reflection's smile widened. The lights above flickered violently. The mirrors darkened, then lit again. Every reflection now perfectly synchronized. Every version of her moving exactly as she did. No delay. No difference. Perfect alignment. The voice softened. We will be you. The glass bulged outward further. Hands pressed against it from the other side. Dozens. Hundreds. All identical. All hers. The terminal crackled. The screen filled with static, then cleared. Showing her standing in the room. Still. Centered. Behind her, nothing. No reflections. No mirrors. Just empty space. You will remain recorded, the voice said. And we will proceed. The mirrors surged outward. The glass stretching. Thinning. And for the first time, Lena saw beyond them. Not reflections. Not images. But something vast, layered, endless, a network of overlapping frames. Each one slightly different, each one containing a version of her. Moving, learning, waiting. The maze shifted violently, closing in, forcing her toward the terminal, toward the screen, toward the center, the only stable point left. Lena stumbled, her breath ragged. The reflections pressed closer, closer. Until there was nowhere left to look, without seeing herself. Or something that was no longer just her. Chapter 3. The cry echoed through the fog above the monastery. Long, mournful, impossible. It did not sound like an animal. Nor anything human. The noise rolled slowly across the mountain like something vast dragging itself through the storm clouds beyond sight. Every monk in the courtyard lowered themselves to their knees instantly. The old monk's grip tightened painfully around Marcus's wrist. "Do not look upward," he whispered. The suspended snowflakes trembled harder around them. Marcus's pulse thundered in his ears. "What is it?" The old monk stared downward at the stone ground as though terrified to lift his eyes. The listeners. Another cry drifted through the fog. Closer this time. The wooden buildings surrounding the courtyard creaked softly beneath the sound, beams groaning as though pressured from above by enormous unseen weight. Marcus swallowed hard. The monks remained kneeling motionlessly in the snow. Their hoods lowered, their shifting faces hidden once more. The old monk pulled Marcus toward one of the narrow side corridors connecting the monastery buildings. "We must go below before they descend." Marcus resisted instinctively. "What's below?" Pain crossed the monk's face. "The truth." The shadows behind the paper walls moved violently now, silhouettes twisting unnaturally through the rooms beyond as if the monastery itself had filled with unseen crowds. The cry above sounded again. And this time, something answered from beneath the monastery. A deep vibration rolled upward through the stone beneath Marcus's boots. Breathing. Massive breathing. Marcus's chest tightened painfully. The old monk hurried him through the corridor. The narrow passage smelled strongly of damp wood and ancient incense. Frost coated the interior walls despite the complete absence of wind. Thin prayer banners hung from the ceiling beams overhead, covered in faded symbols Marcus could not understand. The breathing beneath them continued. Slow, rhythmic, alive. Marcus glanced toward one paper window as they passed. And froze. A face stared in at him from the other side. His own face, pale and expressionless beneath the falling snow. Marcus stumbled backward. The figure outside did not move. Its eyes remained fixed on him through the paper screen. The old monk yanked Marcus forward immediately. "Do not acknowledge them." Marcus stared at him in horror. "That was me." The monk shook his head rapidly. "No, it only learns your shape." The corridor opened into a narrow stairwell descending beneath the monastery. Darkness waited below. The smell rising upward from beneath the stairs made Marcus gag instantly. Wet stone, rot, and something else, ocean salt. Ancient and suffocating. Marcus stopped. "This place is on a mountain." The monk nodded slowly. They were never buried beneath earth. The answer made no sense. Yet Marcus felt immediate terror hearing it. Another cry rolled through the monastery above them. This one so close the walls trembled visibly. Dust drifted from the ceiling beams. And somewhere overhead, something enormous scraped slowly across the roof. Marcus's blood turned cold. The sound resembled massive claws dragging across wood and stone. The monks in the courtyard began chanting softly outside. Thousands of whispers layered together. Low, repetitive. The old monk descended the stairs quickly. Marcus followed reluctantly into the darkness below. The stairwell spiraled deep beneath the monastery foundations, carved directly into black mountain stones slick with moisture. Thin candles burned along the walls at uneven intervals, their flames bending strangely toward the depths below instead of upward. The chanting above continued faintly through the ceiling. Marcus's breathing echoed softly around the stairwell. Then another set of footsteps echoed beneath his own. He stopped immediately. The second footsteps stopped too. Marcus slowly turned. No one stood behind him. Only darkness stretching upward toward the monastery above. The old monk continued descending. "Hurry!" Marcus followed again. The deeper they went, the warmer the air became. Not comforting warmth, wet warmth, like descending into something breathing. The stairwell finally opened into a massive underground chamber. Marcus froze instantly. The room beneath the monastery was enormous, far larger than should have been possible beneath the mountain. Black stone pillars stretched upward into darkness beyond sight, while shallow water covered most of the chamber floor in rippling reflective pools. And throughout the chamber, thousands of bodies knelt silently in the water. Monks, still wearing ancient robes, rows upon endless rows of them disappearing into the darkness. Every figure faced the same direction, toward the center of the chamber. Marcus's pulse hammered painfully. They're dead. The old monk did not answer immediately. Instead, he stared toward the kneeling figures with hollow exhaustion. They're listening. Marcus stepped carefully into the chamber. The water covering the stone floor was warm against his boots. Far too warm. The kneeling monks did not move. Yet Marcus heard whispering drifting softly through the chamber. Not from above, from the kneeling bodies themselves. Thousands of voices murmuring endlessly beneath their lowered heads. The old monk pointed toward the center of the chamber. Marcus followed his gaze, and his stomach twisted violently. A massive black pit opened in the center of the monastery foundations. Perfectly circular, bottomless, the whispering rose from within it. Marcus stepped closer slowly. The air around the pit vibrated faintly. And deep below, something moved. Not climbing upward, turning. Marcus felt it instantly, an awareness slowly focusing upon him from impossible depth. His knees weakened. What is down there? The old monk closed his eyes. The first apparition. Marcus stared at him. The first monk who listened. The whispering within the pit intensified immediately. Marcus realized suddenly that the voices weren't random. They repeated the same phrase endlessly. Look below. Look below. Look below. Marcus backed away from the pit instinctively. The kneeling monks around the chamber all lifted their heads at once. Every face was blank. Smooth skin stretched across. Featureless skulls. No mouths. No eyes. No noses. Yet the whispering continued. Marcus's breathing became ragged. The old monk stepped closer to the pit. When the first monks came to the mountain centuries ago, they heard voices within the storms. They believed enlightenment waited beneath the monastery. The cry above the monastery echoed again. Directly overhead now, the chamber ceiling trembled. They descended into the mountain seeking divine truth. The water around the kneeling monks rippled softly. And they found something listening in the dark. Marcus stared into the pit. The darkness below moved slowly. Not empty. Occupied. The old monk's voice shook. It learned their voices first. The whispering from the pit deepened. Marcus heard Ethan's voice among them suddenly. Then his mother's. Then his own. They became apparitions because it remembered them. The realization struck Marcus with crushing force. The ghosts were not spirits. Not dead souls. Copies. Imitations learned by something ancient beneath the mountain. The old monk looked toward him sadly. It wears the dead like prayer masks. The kneeling monks around the chamber began rising slowly from the water. Thousands of faceless heads turning toward Marcus together. The whispering stopped instantly. Absolute silence crushed through the chamber. Then, something began climbing upward inside the pit. Marcus stumbled backward. At first he saw only movement. Then pale shapes. Faces. Hundreds of human faces emerging slowly along the walls of the pit, fused together into one enormous ascending mass. Mouths opened and closed silently across its surface while countless blind eyes rolled beneath stretched translucent skin. Marcus nearly collapsed. The thing continued rising. Its body did not have proper shape. Only endless layers of human forms merged together into something vast and wrong. And among the shifting faces, Marcus saw Ethan screaming silently beneath the flesh. Still alive, still aware, the old monk stepped toward the pit slowly. It remembers everyone it hears. The creature's countless mouths opened wider together. and Marcus heard his own voice emerging from them. Perfectly. Marcus. The chamber shook violently. The thing had recognized him fully now. The old monk turned sharply toward Marcus. Run! The monks surrounding the chamber lurched forward simultaneously, their faceless heads twisting unnaturally as they moved through the shallow water. Marcus ran immediately. The chamber erupted into whispering behind him. Thousands of voices crying his name. The stairwell appeared ahead through the darkness. Marcus sprinted upward desperately as the monastery trembled around him. The cries above the monastery merged with the whispers below until the entire mountain seemed alive with sound. Something enormous moved across the rooftops overhead again. The wood groaned violently beneath its weight. Marcus burst back into the courtyard. The storm had returned. Snow whipped furiously between the buildings. But the monastery itself was no longer whole. The structures bent inward impossibly now, corridors stretching far beyond their original lengths while shadows moved beneath the wood like veins beneath skin. The monks stood throughout the storm watching him silently. Each now wore Marcus's face. Everyone smiling. The gate appeared ahead through the blizzard. Marcus ran toward it. The cries above descended lower through the fog. And for one terrible moment, Marcus looked upward. Shapes moved within the storm clouds. Enormous pale figures drifting silently through the fog above the monastery, their bodies composed entirely of overlapping human faces whispering endlessly into the snow. The sight nearly shattered his mind. Marcus threw himself through the monastery gate. The storm wind hit him violently. The mountain path stretched downward into darkness below. Behind him, silence fell instantly. Marcus turned slowly. The monastery stood motionless against the cliffs once more. Still, ancient, empty, no movement visible anywhere, only the prayer banners hanging along the rooftops. And now, each banner bore his name written across the cloth in faded black ink. Years later, climbers lost within those mountains would sometimes speak of hearing voices through the storms at night. Some described distant chanting echoing from impossible heights above the cliffs. Others claimed they glimpsed monks standing silently within the snow, their faces hidden beneath dark hoods. But the strangest stories always came from those who survived blizzards alone. They spoke of hearing their own voices whispering softly through the fog beside them, calling gently from somewhere higher up the mountain, promising warmth, promising peace, promising that the monastery still remembered them, waiting patiently in the storm for them to return and listen forever. For more stories, like and subscribe.